Chapter 5. Imelda wept for weeks and sat in her house looking up at the sky, pleading for her baby to return. She would not allow her husband to patch up the roof, as she was sure Anna would return to her one day. Family and friends came by daily in an effort to distract Imelda by inviting her to socials, but she refused to leave her house. She wanted to be there for her baby's return. She got little sleep and became disillusioned. Manuel noticed that Imelda would talk to herself often. She would hold long conversations while appearing to be nursing a baby. He was very concerned and would go to hug her, but each time he tried, she would reject him. She did not want him near and would scream each time he approached her. One night he got up and noticed that Imelda was not sitting in her usual spot. Instead, she was sitting at the foot of the bed with her back turned to him. She was singing a lullaby and seemed unusually happy. He sat up questioning what was happening. "Imelda, my wife, what are you doing?" At first, she did not respond. She seemed to be in a trance. Manuel asked a second time, "Imelda, my wife, what are you doing?" "Our baby has returned, Manuel. Look at her. She does not cry at night anymore. What a blessing." Manuel knew that was impossible, but he could not help it. He was curious to know what she was talking about. "Where is she, Imelda?" "Right here in my arms." Imelda stood up and started walking away before slowly turning around, while rocking her baby, who was cradled in her arms. She continued to hum a childhood song her mother once sung to her. As she added words to the tune, Manuel could not help but to stare in incredulity.
Cuando se rompa el moño, la cuna se va a caer. No te preocupes que mamá te va a agarrar con toda y cuna.
"Come, Manuel, look at our baby. Isn't she beautiful?" Manuel looked at her in amazement. His eyes were transfixed on her. He felt helpless and was almost entranced by her ghostly appearance, but was quickly alerted as his attention drifted from Imelda's eyes to the invisible child she embraced in her arm. Manuel spoke softly. "Imelda, my love, look at me. Look at me, please. What has happened to you?" Imelda's eyes were completely black. There was now no sign of humanness about her. Her soul seemed to have abandoned her body and was replaced with a paranormal being. Her movement was liturgical and eerie. Her speech became slurred, and an uncanny feeling of horror surrounded Manuel the closer she came. She finally opened her mouth to speak, but her husband could not understand the babbling that rushed out of her mouth. Manuel's eyes slowly fell to Imelda's rocking arms, and chills ran throughout his body when what appeared to be a translucent form of a human child clinging to her breast laid motionless before him. "Is this even possible?" he thought to himself. He became numb. His tongue could not lift his words. He stared for a while until his speech returned. He was determined not to allow this evil to overcome him. He whispered a prayer, then spoke to his wife once more. "Imelda, Anna is gone. There is no baby in your arms." Manuel leaped towards her and held her tightly. She fought violently and loud shrieks could be heard coming from the little hut. Manuel continued to pray and held Imelda until she calmed down. He had been struggling with this dilemma for a while now and had exhausted all possible routes for help. This was his new normal, but how long would he be able to sustain his strength? and the realization of this uncertainty was what bothered him most of all. At this point, even the neighbors were no longer disturbed by her behavior. They did not bother to investigate the disturbances, as her screams and wails were no longer a surprise to them. Manuel helped his wife to bed, and they both fell asleep. Around 12 midnight, Imelda awoke. She heard her baby crying and became overwhelmed by her emotions. She looked at her husband to ensure that he was still sleeping. She then slipped out of bed and left the house unnoticed. Imelda followed the cry into the forest all the way to the riverbank. She paid no attention to her surroundings as her focus was on her baby. The dark night was cold, but Imelda did not shiver, not even for a second. She did not even blink. It almost seems as if she was holding her breath. She strode barefooted on damp earth. Her movement was slow and calculated. Nothing could distract her from her baby. Imelda's long, loose black hair swayed slowly in the wind while her outstretched arms reached incessantly for her child. Her long white nightgown bustled in the wind as she glided closer to her child. She saw her crying baby drifting in the river on a white, glimmering, floating object. Anna was swaddled in an iridescent white cloth, exposing only her illuminant face. Imelda was entranced by this apparition. She followed baby Anna in the river and never resurfaced.